Right now I'm standing next to a nuclear warhead. I don't think this is the best idea, but with popular request, a few hundred of you have been asking me for absolutely ages to cover one specific mod, and that's a mod which has questionable ethics and even more questionable weapons, and that's none other than the HBM nuclear tech mod. So in this mod showcase, we're going to be covering all of its features and exactly what the mod has to offer. Let's jump into it. Now we can create something called the trench mask, which is basically a protection mask to protect against airborne particles and chemical gas hazards. Now if you're wondering how to create this, we use this cloth, and we can drop the cloth into water to make damp cloth, or we can literally just grab the cloth, right click on it and turn it into urinated rags, which is kind of sus, but yeah, we can right click on this, and if we do this a few times we can get quite a few. And you want to make this trench mask, which you can actually make out of 3. So I can go ahead here, put 3 in the top layer, and we can make this trench mask. And then what you can go ahead and do is wear this trench mask on your face, and this is going to protect you from those airborne pathogens in the mod. And if we go in the guidebook, you can see specifically this is going to protect you against things like coal dust and mustard gas if you ever happen to actually run into those and encounter them in the mod. There's also a few other things you want to create first of all in the world, and these are the burner press, which you can create with iron pieces, a block of iron, 1 piston and a furnace, and this is the burner press, so we're just going to take this out. And you can also make 1 type of metal anvil. So the 2 examples I'm going to show you, which are both tier 1, are the iron, which you make out of iron bars and also a block of iron, and also lead, which is the same crafting recipe but obviously for lead. So these are the first 2 main starting blocks you want to have, and these are particularly useful because they actually let you do 2 different things. So the burner press in here, this is the interface, and this is the anvil interface. Now you may be a little bit overwhelmed because this is a little bit different to the vanilla Minecraft anvil, but rest assured I'm going to explain it. Now as you can see, the anvil basically allows you to manually craft together early machinery so we can create the assembler, and the burner press will let us make plates, wires and circuits that we can't manually hammer together on the anvil. So they both have these 2 separate uses for them, and as you can see we can use different templates in the anvil to see what we can actually create with it and what the recipes are. So it's basically showing us the recipes, i.e. the inputs and outputs inside the interface, and we can also use the search panel below as well. As you can see, next up we need to create what's called templates. Now we can do this via an item called the machine template holder. So it says in order to stamp metal into useful shapes, assemble machinery and perform chemical reactions, you'll need a machine template folder to create the various stamps and templates shown to the right. Now to make a machine template holder, I have one in this chest over here. You create it using any of these items, so chemical dye, cocoa beans, fluorite. We can use dyes or crayons, and then paper in the middle and bone meal. So there's kind of a lot of different items we can use in this crafting recipe over here, and this lets us create the machine template folder. And as you can see, here's a little bit of information on the items tag. Now another aspect is scavenging. So as you can see, there's various structures which pre-exist throughout the world when spawning in with this mod that will generate, and you can basically loot some pretty cool items in them via scavenging. Now scavenging lets us salvage things like metal alloys such as steel, circuitry parts and fissile material which come from the structures like the nuclear power plant for an example, but certain ruins have an excess of danger within them, such as radiation, traps or horrors inside. So you do want to be very careful about those things. Now you can see over there, if you look in the distance, we do actually have a structure, and you can see over here we have an actual nuclear warhead inside the ground as well, which will be an interesting thing to actually investigate shortly. Even though I'm on super flat mode, you can see a lot of these structures are actually spawning in relative close proximity to the village, which is right next door to where we are. So as for early machinery, we have the blast furnace and the assembly machine. Now the blast furnace basically allows us to create alloys, so we're talking like steel alloy, the mixed grade copper alloys and advanced alloy. You can see we can use these metals for the machine bodies when we're crafting machines, the wiring of our circuits, the advanced electromagnetics and more items. Now the assembler is then used after this to create practically every other machine described in the guide. You'll need a power source such as a combustion generator or solar boiler. So as you can see, we have the blast furnace in here, which we create using one of the recipes in the anvil, and we'll use stone bricks, fire bricks and copper panels, as you can see over here, which are created from all these materials. So here are some of those blocks which I mentioned before. So we have the combustion generator, the assembly machine and the solar tower boiler. So the assembly machine is made with basic circuits, motor, industrial grade copper, steel ingot and glass in the anvil, whereas the combustion generator is made with shaped crafting, and this is made out of 6 steel ingots, a steel tank, Minecraft grade copper, and a furnace, and this is how we make the steel tank in the recipe as well. And the solar tower boiler is made out of steel ingots, crayons, coal powder or dye, and also big steel shells. And I'll just put these machines down so we can take a look at these as well. So we have the assembly machine over here, which is a pretty big block machine. Then we have the combustion generator, which is a single block machine, and we also have this solar tower boiler. So inside the assembly machine, this is the GUI. We can use templates for the template machine folder. So as you see, we created this earlier, so we'd use this inside these machines to create templates. As you can see, it says this requires an assembly template to actually create something, and we can also use upgrading these machines to upgrade it to level 3. This machine, the tower boiler, doesn't have a GUI, but the combustion generator, and there's a slot for, I believe, a battery for the power here as well to store the HE energy directly to it. And also you can see there's actually a tank for water, so I'll just show you if we just dump some water in one of these slots, like here. This is the input slot for water. It's not oil, it's for water, and then water fills in the tank, and then it outputs the water bucket in the bottom. Next up, we have the shredder block. So using shredder blades, we can use this for doubling the output of most of our ores in the HBM tech mod. We use this via the process of shredding, and we shred that ore into smeltable powders, which we can use, and they're crucial to make the circuitry in the mod for various machines. We're talking the enhanced and the overclocked circuits, which I'll show you in a moment. Now, using the new machinery blocks which we've placed down, we can create the chemical plant, which we use for the synthesis of better circuits, concrete, the processing of petrochemicals, and more. So I'll just show you those blocks now here. We have the enhanced circuit, which is created from military grade circuit board. Then we have the overclock circuit, which is made from a tier 4 military grade circuit board. And this is what the shredder block looks like, which we need the blades. So you want to actually spawn 2 of these saw blades, and we can pop them directly into the bottom here. This is the saw blades input. And then we'll spawn the chemical plant, which is another larger block, just like the other one. And inside here, we can see we have different inputs as well. And you can click on recipes to see what recipes we can use. So obviously you put heavy oil, for an example, different types of oil in input. And then you want to have a template, which we use the template folder for. And then it will output what you're actually trying to create. So for an example, it will turn heavy oil into bitumen and industrial oil. Next up on the black gold section, we have an oil reservoir detector. Okay, so we use this to find underground oil deposits, which we can place a pump jack or derrick over this spot via surveying an area. So we need to remember that these oil deposits will actually run out over time, so you can actually deplete them. Now, before oil can be refined though first and separated into its constituent parts in the oil refinery, we must actually heat the oil to 300 degrees centigrade in the boiler. So all of these blocks are going to work kind of in conjunction to each other. So as you can see, we have the pump jack over here, the reservoir detector, which we use to actually detect if oil's nearby. Then we have the oil derrick and the oil refinery, and also the boiler. As you can see, the boiler has been connected onto the oil refinery. This is the refinery slots, so you would put the hot crude oil in here and you would obviously heat it up, and this is the derrick as well. Okay, so all of these require a certain setup and power to actually function over the spots. Next up is the petrochemicals subsection of the mod. So using chemical plants, fractioning towers, and catalytic cracking towers, we can transform the separated oil into a variety of useful products. So this would be things like polymer or bakelite, durable and flexible plastics, desh, and extremely durable and heat resistant rare earth metal alloy, solid fuel, which can be burnt for energy, and even liquid fuel. So in that section, we're talking things like gasoline, diesel, kerosene, and more. So as you can see, this is the chemical plant over here. Now you see with this mod, most things have connectors, so you can connect everything to each other, but they don't always go in conjunction. So this is the chemical plant. Then we have the fractioning tower. Then we have the catalytic cracking tower. And these are obviously the items I was talking about. So we have the polymer bar over here, the bakelite bar, the desh ingot, solid fuel, gasoline, diesel, and kerosene. Now when it comes to advanced machinery, we have quite a few options and certain different applications for them and different uses and purposes for them. So with oil processing under our belt, now that we've been over that section, we can then begin to create what's called the centrifuge. So the centrifuge will triple ore outputs. Then the ore acidizer, another block, will basically crystallize ores, which increase the yield. And the silex and the fel are two marvels of modern engineering, which can separate the isotopes of these materials with ease. Will require significantly more energy to power these though, which can be obtained by different sources, which would usually be the diesel generator, an industrial generator, or even a nuclear reactor. So those are your options for actually powering those machines. So this is the centrifuge over here. Then we have the ore acidizer, the laser isotope separation chamber, which is the full name for the Silex, which definitely does look like it would be inside a nuclear reactor, which is obviously the point of it. Then we have the FEL. All of these blocks in this mod have some really cool GUIs. And then for generators, we have the simple diesel generator. We have the more complex industrial generator, which has a lot more inputs and space for things like gasoline and diesel and heating oil. It has tanks in it, engine lubricant. There's a lot of different slots in this thing. And the nuclear reactor, which is the more complex of all the blocks, which you can see upon first glance looks a little bit challenging and confusing, right? Underground we'll find various different blocks. So we have naturally occurring strata, which are special mineral layers and formations. We have schist, which are strata that are blue lithium containing layers which are filled with either uranium, iron, copper, asbestos, or other ores which you can use yourself. Now, depth rock contains large quantities of rarer materials and minerals such as zirconium and boron, but we need explosives to actually clear these. Now you can see this is actually schist over here, which as you can see if we hover over it, it's actually radioactive, which is why it gives us blindness. So you can see these are kind of toxic minerals, but you will find these underground. This is the schist subsect of them. Then we also have deep rock, which this is actually the cleaned ores from those, so deep cleaned ores which come from deep rock. And zirconium, for an example, this destroyed only by explosives, this is what it looks like underground. So this would be the zirconium block, which kind of looks like some kind of deep slate or some block from the nether. And then we also have a block of boron, for an example, so this is also another underground mineral, and boron ingots form the boron block. Throughout the example earlier for this zirconium ore, we need explosives to blow this up, so I'll show you. And we're going to set this off with a flint and steel just to show you that it will explode once we use explosives. Now, I was mentioning that certain blocks are radioactive, so let's actually talk about radiation in the mod and radioactivity. Enough exposure to this radiation in the mod can actually cause the player harm, so this is something you need to actually be careful of. Now, the first step is prevention for this, so actually prevent taking the damage and being exposed in the first place. So we need to limit our exposure, and we can do this by wearing protective gear. So we can use cladding, which are basically applicable to actually clothing and armor. So you can see we have different tiers of cladding. As you can see, we have obsidian skin. The tiers of cladding obviously makes it stronger. And then also we have the hazmat suits, okay? Now the hazmat suits actually need a filter installed into them, but they're made from reinforced hazmat cloth to actually produce them. So as you can see, I just opened up that starter kit and it gave me some hazmat leggings, and it gave me kind of like a basic hazmat armor set, just to show you guys what a working hazmat suit will look like in game. And you heard that kind of like radiation sound you'd expect to see off a game like Fallout, and that obviously tells me that it's working, right? But the mask has no filter, so we're just going to spawn a gas mask filter, and as you can see now we have a filter and we can actually breathe in radioactive zones. So as for uranium enrichment, there's a few different options for fuels to use for our nuclear reactor. So we can use a natural uranium, we can use thorium fuel, but if we're looking for something much more powerful, we can set up an enrichment cascade, which we'd set up with 2 gas centrifuges to produce uranium fuel with leftover uranium-238 as a byproduct, and we'll have to transmute the natural uranium into yellow cake, then uranium hexafluoride to do so. So we have some basic schist uranium ore over here to show you some uranium. Then we have the 2 gas centrifuges, and this is the pieces of uranium fuel over here, the yellow cake, and also the uranium hexafluoride tanks, which we need to use. So page number 14, the Chicago pile. So we can breed reactor grade plutonium, which is a more powerful fuel from natural uranium, using what's called the Chicago pile. We stack graphite blocks and drill into those blocks, and we can then insert fuel rods there to breed into plutonium and neutron source rods, such as radium, beryllium, to begin the reaction. We need to make sure to test the design, spacing out or limiting the amount of blocks, which is something that may be necessary to prevent overheating. So this is reactor grade plutonium ingots. Then we have Chicago pile uranium rods, blocks of graphite, which is created by graphite ingots. We have thorium fuel rods, plutonium ingots, the beryllium neutron source rods over here, and also the neutron source pellets. So as you can see, these are just some examples of these blocks, just to show you guys. So onto the ZIRNOX GCR page of the guidebook. So we can create our first real source of energy. This is called the ZIRNOX nuclear reactor, and these nuclear reactors kind of require a complex setup, at least more so than other power sources. So we want to have a good source of water, so we can use the heavy infinite water source tank for this, and we want to remove heat from our reactor's core and boil this water into steam. And we can use this pressure, but we need a sufficient amount of carbon dioxide to actually do this process. Now, if you want just enough pressure but not too much, then you also need 3 steam turbines to utilize the created steam to then make energy out of it. And the steam turbine or industrial steam turbine is most optimal. And finally, a condenser or auxiliary cooling tower to condense the leftover steam back into water, where it can either be voided or recycled into a cooling loop and start from the beginning. So this is our ZIRNOX nuclear reactor, in case you haven't seen it from earlier. This is the heavy infinite source water tank, the universal fluid tanks, which contain carbon dioxide. Then we have the steam turbine, the industrial steam turbine, the steam condenser, and the auxiliary cooling towers. So I'm just going to show you the GUI inside each block. Obviously, the bigger the machinery, the more complex it's going to be. So now that I've taken you through the in-game guide, we're going to take a look at a few other of the aspects and features of the HBM nuclear tech mod, because this mod is so massive and it's hard to condense it all into one video. So as you can see, we have a bunch of heavy gun turrets over here. So we're going to spawn these and I'm going to show you them so we can check them out. There's some crazy weapons in this mod. I'm surprised I haven't actually featured this one in a top 10 guns mod video. I didn't realize how many cool weapons are in here. Let's just spawn a bunch of these cool turrets over here so you can see just some of the weapons we can use in this mod. This mod's definitely more extensive. It kind of deserves a bit more credit than it actually gets, to be honest. But this is one of the most requested mods I've been getting. Oh damn, this pretty cool GUI. All these gun turrets, I definitely not want to run into these. It looks like something off Satisfactory. We also have sentry guns as well. And these are all operated by different things. So we can target passive mobs, we can target players, target normal mobs, target other machines. So like player-built machines, we can turn it on or off with this input. I believe this is for a battery input. This is for the actual rounds that it takes to actually use it to fire with. And this is for the energy to actually put into it to actually power it. We can actually use larger ones like this rocket artillery turret. Then also this bigger artillery turret as well. Now, I believe this would be great if we paired it with other mods. I'm not sure if this runs on the same version, but I'm pretty sure Flans mod works for 1.7.10, the older version of Flans mod. So shooting down some kind of chopper with this would just be absolutely legendary. We'll have to try that on a server sometime. Then there's also a bunch of cool weapons. Now, you'll see some of them have different colors. They're kind of not exactly the same weapon, but they have the same shape. So you have loads of different magnums, for example. Now, I'm just going to reload it. As you can see, this one uses lead bullets. And it shoots with the left mouse and reloads with the right mouse. Now, if you hover over the weapons, some of them say lead bullet, some of them say gold bullet, but it'll change based on the bullet you have in your inventory. So for an example, most of them will actually use any type of bullet, but not all of them will. Then we have this weapon that's just called Josh, which is like a fully auto M4 carbine. Some of these weapons have really cool particle effects as well. Then we also have the NTM bomb section. So as you can see, this is nuclear tech mod bombs. We have the Little Boy, which is actually a real bomb. The Fat Man, the Ivy Mike, the Tsar Bomber, which is also the name of a watch company. We have the Prototype, the Flayer, the Blue Rinse, the Balefire Bomb, and the custom nuke. Okay, now if you right click on them, there are obviously ways to actually activate these guys, and there's obviously timers you can type in as well, and they require actually items and inputs to actually launch them. Okay, because these are just actually the shells of the weapons, not the full weapons itself. It actually requires components to actually trigger them. I also have this airstrike designator, and when you right click and call an airstrike, it physically calls in a plane to fly overhead, and it just bombs absolutely everything. So if you're wondering how to turn stuff into a wasteland, this is how. I'm just going to keep spamming airstrikes, and these planes are just going to keep going on overhead and just dropping carpet bombs all over the world. They're just making these crazy explosions. It's just absolutely incredible. And now, most of the turf down here is just an apocalyptic wasteland, which is a far cry from what it looked like from the start to where we are now, right? Okay, so now before the end of the video, we're going to take a look at a few of the structures in this flatgrass map. Now, you can see this village has already been absolutely destroyed, and these bombs actually changed the blocks. You can see we have damaged blocks, we have charred earth and ground, and surrounding some of these areas, we have, for an example, these large telecommunications towers, and inside we have loot, so scrap, steel poles, and different types of batteries. So the loot I was talking about earlier, if you raid some of these different structures and also the compounds, they'll have different loot in. Now, I'm going to check inside this compound over here, and we're going to take a look at these bombs on the ground as well. This would be really cool for a zombie survival mod. So if we jump in, you can see this place has cobwebs everywhere. It's kind of half broken. We have radios inside, and sometimes it can be hard to find loot in the abandoned buildings unless you really burrow down for it. But in the ground, you may be able to also find some of these bombs, which are just dropped down below. And these are discarded warheads, which is just in the ground. Also down here, there's like a crashed, what looks like a spaceship or some kind of plane. So we'll jump inside here. It's kind of like a base, which has been discarded. And these places, you can find explosives, you can find chests. You can also find like mini rooms inside some of them. And these are going to be the best places to get resources in. So at the start of the game, if you can find one of these, this is going to be the absolute godsend of a place to actually get things to actually start off in the mod. So if you don't have anything from the start, this is really one of the best places. We have this Nuka-Cola, just like off Fallout, advanced batteries, these nades, which we can actually throw this building and blow from the wall. We have a gas mask filter, Nuka-Cola, and a Fat Man launcher. There's like a little sensor on this base, and we can go inside. There's a little more in this base than the last one. There's also bats everywhere, which is kind of cool. And this place is an absolute compound. There's multiple rooms. If you're really careful, you can see around the corners. There's also a lot of crates in here. These are great spots to get ammo, guys, and just general components. So I'd recommend just to go out, venture out, and try and find some of these structures, because they save you a boatload of time on crafting everything, because they have loads of stuff. So you can kind of get a shortcut in the mod, but they will be a little bit more dangerous, for an example, because right now I'm on peaceful mode. So when you run into these compounds, you may run into enemies. Oh look, we just left the door and there's absolutely nothing here. And we'll close out this video by checking out this last place, which kind of seems like some kind of factory. So let's just go see what's inside and what's on the outside. Break some of this steel wall away. And this is a factory. Okay, so this area will probably have some of the best loot in terms of actually the production of stuff. These are great compounds to actually utilize and take them over and kind of give them a makeover to make them into your own base. And that concludes this video mod showcase on the HBM nuclear tech mod. If you have any questions about the mod, do leave them in the description down below. I tried to make this a general guide which kind of follows the in-game guide. I know that I left out a lot of information, for example, all of the core information when you go inside blocks and what you put in for certain inputs and how you operate a lot of the machinery. I know I left out a lot of crucial information on that. So if you have any specific questions and you're struggling on actually getting a lot of the machinery to work, getting some of the explosives to actually operate properly and work some of the features in the mod which I didn't cover as closely as you probably wanted me to, then please do leave a comment down below so I can try and get back to you. And also leave a like on the video and make sure to subscribe, because I'm releasing a lot of mod showcases on this channel on how to play certain mods. So that's all I have to say for this video, so I'll catch you real soon.